Going live twice.
Okay. Nope, still not live. Hold on.
Good. Okay, whatever.
Great. It should now read. Well, it takes a few seconds to see it on the actual thing on our YouTube channel. Just making sure that folks at home can see us if we're live. And there we go. Okay, guys, we are live on YouTube. So if you're just tuning in, welcome, ActorsNET friends and family. We are here tonight for a live virtual talkback for Dear Brutus. Normally we have these talkbacks like the second weekend at the theater, but since we've done everything virtual, let's do it here on YouTube Live now as well. I'm Haley Rubens-Topolewski. I am the hostess with the mostest tonight, moderating the live chat and asking all of the fun questions to you all. Let's start it off by introducing some of the people who were in the production. Mary Alice.
My name is Mary Alice Rubens-Topolewski. I am the director, and I also played Joanna Trout in the play.
I'm Charlotte Kirkby. I'm the assistant director, I guess, and I played Margaret and the narrator.
And Joe and Cheryl Doyle.
Okay. I'm Cheryl Doyle. I'm co-founder and artistic director, and I played Mrs. Code in the play.
And I'm Joe Doyle, co-founder and general manager, and I played Mr. Code.
All right, Nick.
Hi, I'm Nicholas Pecht, and I played Lob.
Fantastic. Naima.
Hi, I'm Naima Lunsford, and I played Lady Caroline.
Fantastic. And Ken.
Hi, I'm Ken Ammerman, and I played Métis the butler.
Kat, you're up next.
I'm Kat. I was Alice.
She is thrilled to be here, you guys.
I'm the
That's all you need to know. She's Kat.
Just Kat. All right, I think that's everyone that we have right now. We might have some more people joining later on. Hopefully, we will see. But some of the questions that we've had submitted so far, this is to the actors. Did you find filming with multiple takes to be easier or harder than acting on stage in front of an audience? Kat?
Well,
go ahead.
Okay. It's an entirely different animal. There's you prepare for it completely differently to be filmed than you do for a stage production. They're both equally enjoyable, but the challenges are different. So, you don't have to memorize one continuous scene after another if you're going to do it this way. But then you also don't have the benefit of getting into a rhythm and muscle memory and all that stuff. So, there's just pros and cons on both sides, but it was fun.
Yeah, I found it odd not looking at the person I was talking to, except for the short period when Joe and I were together. That was odd. But for film, I guess it's pretty much what you do anyway, but it's definitely different from the stage.
It was hard not to move. I always wanted to move, and I couldn't do it. I felt like constricted, in a box.
Restricted in your own living room.
Yes.
All right, cool. How about you guys? What did you think?
I mean, well, as a narrator, I didn't have to sort of do the face thing as well, but it was interesting, like sort of trying to, because I had the advantage of not having to memorize my lines. Maybe I should have, but I didn't. But that came with the added drawback of trying to sort of keep an eye on what was going and also read my script in the same sort of pace. So it was interesting, but also a challenge.
So how do you guys think that Zoom affected your performance as actors? And what do you find particularly challenging or rewarding about this medium? being on Zoom as opposed to like film or live theater?
Well, I think that being on Zoom gave us opportunities that you wouldn't normally get on stage, to do fun things like, hand off a tissue, spinning in a chair, to represent whatever. And so I think it was a lot of fun trying to translate a stage performance and like what we would have done on stage to now a Zoom performance. What was the rest of the question?
Yeah, that was pretty much it. What did you find challenging or rewarding about the medium?
The technology.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was rewarding to,
Terrible.
To translate a stage performance to a different medium. Definitely.
I heard technology. I agree with that. Who said that?
Yeah, it was me. The technology is it's not one of my strengths, so I struggled with it. But fortunately, I didn't have to do all the editing and wrangling, so I just had to mercifully hit a link to join in every time we had to film, and sometimes I couldn't even do that right.
Oh,
I think maybe like one of the downsides was not getting like Starbucks beforehand or something like that, and like drinking that. I feel like that's definitely a cat thing, just showing up with Starbucks. And
very true. I had no fuel for this entire series.
Or just, I think a benefit is stretching your mind to a different type of medium. Like Nick said, figuring out things that are totally different than you can't do on stage, or just wouldn't be as funny on stage versus, getting to actually get up and walk around. That was difficult because you're constrained into the box. And I think for technology, yeah, we all struggled with technology, or I think one night.
Oh, here you go. Here's an example of technology.
Perfect example.
Oh my God. You could not have planned it any better.
Imagine filming a play and somebody freezes.
Oh
This
my
is
God. She's
a
still
perfect
in
example.
character. She's doing it right now.
Quick
Tableau.
talk about them while they're dark. Oh,
no, they're doing a wonderful job of staying still.
Okay, there she goes.
There, you're back. You're back.
And now you're out of Tableau. Well done.
What I did find odd was because we were playing it not sideways to a person, but to the person who was out there, we were essentially looking at ourselves while we were acting, and that was a little weird. You had to try not to be affected by going, oh, that looks weird. What am I doing? Just ignore it.
Yeah, I did like the fact that you can't move. The beauty of being on the stage is you can move around.
Yeah.
It's three-dimensional.
Yeah.
But then again, we didn't have to wear pants. So
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
I mean,
But yeah, to
Fun
what
fact,
Cheryl was saying.
all of the performers were naked from the waist down when we filmed this.
I'm naked from the waist down right now.
Right
Now you
now.
tell me.
But to what Cheryl was saying, like being forced to also,
down.
so to be forced to like be confronted with your own image when you're acting and performing, I mean, I'll speak for myself, I can be self-conscious and no, I hate watching myself or listening to myself. So, to sort of be forced to watch and listen to myself, that was, I think, a real challenge, and to get out of that headspace of, oh, I look stupid, or, what's going on in the background, or what's that noise, going on in the parking lot outside or whatever. I think it actually required more focus than doing a stage play.
Yeah, I think that's something that was challenging, both for me and Mary Alice, reviewing the footage, especially even of Act 2, since we were also acting in this, we were forced to watch ourselves, and that was uniquely painful. So multiple times. So yeah, it was something.
So for the directors, since you guys are here, what was the inspiration behind some of the artistic choices you made, like including the portraits and illustrations and going from Zoom to the outdoor filming?
It was all a dream.
It was all a fever dream.
Yeah, it came to me in a fever dream. It did. I mentioned this before. Dear Brutus was a show that Charlotte had originally mentioned to me. Oh man, like
a while ago,
like 2019. And as the ActorsNET, we kind of said, okay, we were even before the pandemic happened, we were kind of planning on that probably being something to do in our season, our upcoming season. So that was great. And when the pandemic hit and we were trying to think of different ways to present theater or material, I was like racking my brain trying to think of what's best. And out of the shows that we read and thought about for next season, which one would work in this type of format, which one wouldn't. And then I can't remember the sequence of events, but I did have a fever dream. I had a crazy dream, and I immediately woke up and messaged Cheryl and Joe and said, hey, I got this idea. Why don't we do Dear Brutus and narrate the J.M. Barrie's stage directions throughout. I encourage you all to read the actual script. It's amazing. His stage directions are pretty much almost all of the narrator's lines. And so it's amazing that he has this very, very vivid image of what's going on. So I said, what if we did that? And then we have like illustrations and things like that. And then to make the dream world feel so much different than how we're kind of all stuck in these boxes, right? Because the characters kind of all stuck in their lives. What if we did it outside and tried to incorporate an actual woods area into the show? And then once Act 2 ended, having to go back to our normal like boxed in lives was kind of the inspiration for it.
And if I can jump in and say something about the narrator, I don't know, I haven't seen any other productions of Dear Brutus, but I imagine they don't include the stage directions as narration. And I know when I read it, I was really delighted by just sort of the personality that shone through, because a lot of playwrights, sometimes their stage directions are just very like abrupt and to the point, like he picks up a cup or she exits or something like that. But then some playwrights are really sort of over the top in their descriptions and comments and so on. And you may remember at the beginning, there's a whole big chunk of narration. And that's like, if we omitted that, there's a lot of character details in there that I think wouldn't necessarily be immediately obvious. Like, for example, that Mrs. Code is Mr. Code's second wife, and she, because he forgets that he doesn't, like that's not necessarily actress, but I don't know if she could convey that with given the information that the lines that she had. So I thought it was really important to include that information. And since it's in a slightly format, almost like a stage reading or something like that, or a storytelling exercise, having a narrator doesn't necessarily detract, I would say, from the play, and perhaps even adds to it. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Well, I think in the absence of dramatic action, the narrator filled a real real gap. And I think part of it is like in that time, people like Barrie and Shaw wrote wonderful, long, elaborate stage directions because they were also writing to be read.
Exactly.
And what I loved about the stage directions was that he talked about all the people somewhat, not sarcastically, but a little bit, but also lovingly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so, how each of them fit into some kind of mode of the time or type of person that you might meet. But there's this other side of them too. And I think it added a lot to it.
And it also gave us a lot more subtext to work with. We didn't have to wonder.
Yeah.
Because he gave so many clues right there as to what to do.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I think because we decided to keep the narrator bit still in, we actually I decided to have the narrator be Margaret, and she's sort of retelling, maybe perhaps it was, a bunch of tales that her father told her, and so she's retelling this, and that's why we see Margaret at the absolute end, or the narrator at the end, and it turns out it's Margaret. So I tried to tie in the narrator so it wasn't just this random person, speaking words.
Spoiler.
Hi, Matt.
Hi, Matt. Yeah, that's another liberty we took with the script, I guess. I know when I read it, I was sort of struck, and when I sort of saw the actors sort of perform the end, I was struck by how like tragic it is, where like perhaps, in my opinion, but of course I'm biased, perhaps the most sympathetic character has had the most sort of tragic, has just realized such a tragic loss. And so to just sort of end it like, oh, well, that's it. It was all a dream, seemed really kind of sad. So we thought, I guess, maybe sort of tying it in. So maybe Margaret does become real in the future, is a little more optimistic.
Yeah.
So that was our thinking.
So it's not so sad for Dearth.
Yeah.
He discovers he had a love child many years ago.
Yeah, and speaking of, we have Matt just joined us. Matt, if you will introduce yourself and talk about your character.
Sure. Can I be heard?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Hey, everybody. Speak about my character. Well, what
Just
can I
say your name. Just your character name.
She didn't make the rest of us do that. I was ready for, oh yeah.
Wow.
That's what happens when you show up late. Now give us a 10-page dissertation on the meaning behind your character. Go.
Right. No, I'm Matt Dugnowski, who played the character Dearth. It was a ton of fun. I'm sorry I'm showing up late. I don't know what kind of ground was covered, but it was a really interesting set of challenges to do this show, and I really give a lot of credit to Mary Alice and Charlotte and others I know who are probably not even being named for kind of seeing that this was possible, and because I know at the outset I didn't know what this was or what this would look like, and it's hard to kind of see that end goal when you're working on a show, even if it's a live show, let alone this. And I watched this along with my family, and my wife had such reactions to it, and I was kind of surprised, honestly, if I'm being honest. I didn't know that this format would land in the way it did, and I actually think the show itself has the perfect structure for what you attempted to do. So I was really happy to be part of it.
Thanks, Matt. So one of the other questions we have is, how did COVID constraints affect things like casting, costuming, props, and
Okay. Well, to start with, just because we kind of knew that I wanted to go outside, and so that means that some of us would have to interact. I try to be cognizant of the actors that I chose and their living situation. So unfortunately, Michael and Mary aren't here. They played Mabel and Jack, or Purdy, or Jack Purdy. they live together. So they got to be able to, you know, do their scene outside and be really close, more so than the rest of us. And then also in Act 3, sit next to each other. And we have Cheryl and Joe, who are already married and get to live with each other. And immediately starting, Charlotte and I already had a little bubble. So we worked together, as well as M, who is at home, but on YouTube. We kind of knew we'd be able to work on this together. And for the rest, I believe a lot of us have the fortunate circumstances of getting to work from home. And that was a big contributor of who I cast and things like that, or asked to do. That way, you know, it's risky. This was a huge risk, but it's less risky because all of the actors were basically pretty much working from home, and the only time they were going out was to go do daily needs kind of thing.
And when it came to the costuming, we like scheduled strict pickup times for different people.
Curbside pickup for costumes.
And then while we were like filming in the forest, there was a lot of mask wearing and hand sanitizing and all of the regular COVID precautions.
We were outside. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that helped.
I think there was like one take where we couldn't use because or we stopped because Ken was like, oh, got my mask on still. So yeah, things like that. Was it a unique set of challenges? But I realized I said I had a fever dream. I did not have COVID. I got tested several times because I just kept having fevers. So yeah, but anybody else have thoughts on that? The unique situation of COVID?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the one thing that we haven't touched upon in terms of COVID is that it's been so long for all of us to get to do any theater at all together. And I don't know if people know this about our kind, but if we don't get attention on like a regular basis, we just die. So to have the opportunity to work within regulations and COVID restrictions and still be able to put something together and be creative and get together with our friends and still give some kind of theater to our ActorsNET community was a major, major bonus for all of us. Well, for me, I don't know about the rest of you.
No, I think after the first time we kind of got together, I think almost I got a message from everybody saying, you know, it was so great to see everyone, and I forgot how much I miss doing theater and things like that. Because I mean, we think about it, but you know, not until we kind of all met online was it like, oh wow, it's been a really long time. I think Matt, Charlotte, and I were the last ones on stage before in Spider's Web before the pandemic hit. So it was kind of crazy.
Yeah, I would say
I was in Spider's Web.
Oh my God! Wow, guys,
You were the spider.
you were a bad man.
I was a bad
I didn't forget.
I am a bad man. We're like,
No,
You
you're
know.
so bad.
Yeah. So I think to that end, it was a creative outlet for all of us. So thank you to all people watching for watching our sort of creative therapy. Maybe appreciating it. We'll see. I know it was such an emotional roller coaster for me because we filmed in 2 separate days. And so the first time I wasn't in anything. And so I was just sort of assisting, and it was great. And I loved sort of seeing people from a distance. But the second filming session was my scene with Matt and Kat. And I was like, I was on like sort of such an emotional high and then crash afterwards because like, at least for me, I'm lucky enough to be bubbled with other people. So I'm not like completely isolated, but it's so weird seeing other people, and then it sort of brings it all home. Wait a second, I haven't seen other people in so many months. And so it was like wonderful, but also deeply depressing. So it's weird.
Yeah.
But I think we got tacos afterwards.
We
so-
did get tacos. That helped.
Yeah.
Charlotte, I had that same feeling because I had that same feeling because when I normally see you, we are walking in the woods at work.
Yeah.
We would normally go for walks in the afternoon,
Exactly.
and all of a sudden, like, we hadn't done that in like a year. And there we were in the woods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's wild.
Yep.
Crazy.
Yes, other questions. So what were some of the challenges that you guys found in filming outside?
Oh,
Well, I think
A
the
road
first
noise,
one-
right?
Yes,
The road noise.
Oh, and the
Purely
airplane.
technically, the sound of filming
Airplane.
outside is a soul-sucking nightmare.
Yeah.
Air traffic.
And airplanes too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and this is what you see in the final product is after Mary Alice has done sort of extensive sound scrubbing and editing. Like, so if you're bothered by the noise now, it was even worse when we were filming. So I think she did a great job with that. I would say I think finding a location was, at least for us, the most challenging, because we sort of went through a whole, like, we needed to we thought we'd want to plug in to have power because you need like the lights and the cameras and everything, and then we realized we weren't going to find that. So the location we found, which was amazing, was like my mother's college roommate's friend knew about it, so it was very sort of like extended, but it's a terrific location in Princeton, and I believe that the Ridgewood Conservancy, and I believe they're opening up to the public soon. It's beautiful paths through the woods, so I encourage you to check it out. I think we have a link in the description of the Dear Brutus video.
It was
We'll put a link in
particularly good for the play because there were these weird little statues and things all over the place. It's just odd little animals and symbols and magical things. And just the next time you go around a tree, there's some weird little thing there.
It was missing.
It felt otherworldly,
Yeah.
that place where we were filming. So
well, how many acres was it?
It was like 25 to 50, something like, it was like the one person like had 5 acres and they like donated to Conservancy, and then they contacted their neighbors. So it was like all this land that in like the last few years they had made paths like themselves. And it was very interesting.
They have Girl Scout troops that go in, and there's high school students, so that's why it has some kind of fun stuff around there.
Yeah.
So it was wonderful. So we Patricia, right?
Patricia Shanley.
Yeah.
She's terrific. Yeah. I think the other sort of logistical issues were it was a great location, but we did have to walk a little ways. So I guess sort of shepherding all of the actors out in their costumes after they parked, and carrying all of the lights and the extra batteries and the sound equipment and stuff. That turns out that filming stuff is actually a lot of work.
Yeah.
So we learned that, or at least I did.
Yeah. I didn't realize like how much equipment we would need for it. You know, normally we show up on a stage and you know, we have to find props and costumes,
but the lights are already there, and like you don't have to worry about sound. Maybe like a motorcycle in the distance.
green room is usually pretty close to the stage.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
This
So
was
it's completely different. But
Also, with live theater, there's this element of you make an error and it's immediately in the past, and you never have to revisit it. You just look ahead, and maybe, I don't know, tomorrow night it'll go okay, and you can just live in the moment because whatever you created is gone as soon as it enters the universe. But I'm sure the editing process was, you know, you revisiting all of the things that we were able to just forget about.
yeah. I think I had when it came to editing, Charlotte and I kind of had a plan. She sat through all of the Zoom recordings, so I didn't have to hear myself as much. And she kind of marked out which takes there were and things like that. And then for Act 2, I did most of the editing and only begged Charlotte to watch if it was absolutely necessary for her to watch. because she's like, there's so many things I would do differently. And that is the benefit of live theater. And I think you're also in the moment, so you kind of do something and it might be different one night versus, the night after that. So that was.
Yeah, I think even with like live theater, if someone like sneaks a recording of you and you see it and you see like, oh, wait, I actually look like that when I'm doing something, people can't see me. Let me move myself for the next time. But when you sort of see the footage and it's done, you can't go back. It's difficult to wrangle people's schedules and so on. It's very like frustrating, I would say, to see things that if I had only been able to sort of stand outside my body and see myself, I would have changed my position slightly or something like that. So yeah, it's difficult, but yeah.
So you guys did a lot of work on the editing, but for some of the actors, what do you think that some of your favorite part of the show was?
Just being with everybody. Actually, just being
Yeah.
able to work with people. It was great. Because I was so bored with my life.
Do you mean of participating in the show or like the final product?
You can interpret that however you'd like to.
I see. Well, I don't have an answer for either. No, I'm just kidding. It actually took me a couple read-throughs of this script for me to sort of visualize it at all. So I was just happy to be hanging out with my friends and doing some theater and playing some character and breaking out my wigs, because I can't go that long without wearing a wig. I need to do it. But watching the final product was, I honestly have to say that when I was looking at the script, I was like, okay, I understand the way you're describing the fever dream, I guess, theoretically. But I couldn't visualize it. I couldn't put together a picture. But then when we submitted our selfies to you and you transformed them into those little drawing versions of us, those little snaps, and then when you put together the final product and you edited it all together and added the art, which really made a big difference, I was like, oh, okay, I see it now. It sort of like removed the block for me and I could see it clearly. And I think it turned out really, really beautifully, especially given the constraints that we all had to, deal with. And editing anything is a soul-sucking nightmare. But something that winds up being like over 2 hours long is just tedious AF. So just the number of keystrokes involved in getting this beast put together is really impressive. And I think the show in itself in the end was really, really well done.
Mm-hmm.
I also like the challenge too, because in the beginning I was in my head a lot about the accent. And I was just like, I don't know how I'm going to do it. But it was a great challenge to push myself to do something outside of what I normally do. And I was so thankful for Kat to take the time to help me out.
Oh,
record your voice for me.
Yeah.
It helped a lot. So
of course, I'm happy to help. And I think you nailed it. I think you really, because that is a really difficult and really weird, esoteric sort of version of the British accent. So to even try and attempt it was pretty crazy. But yeah, you got it. It was great.
Yeah, I had fun watching it. Actually, it was funny. I laughed at myself.
And I know when I first read it, I loved it a lot, and it's sometimes called Peter Pan for grown-ups, which is a little inaccurate, but there is some magic. But I did say what I liked about it was about grown-ups, which was people with grown-up relationship problems, not drastic. Somebody's a drug addict or he's going to kill somebody. I mean, but just real honest to God relationship problems that are pretty timeless. So I wasn't worried about it being dated. But I think the way it played, the Mary Alice and Charlotte, the way you broke it into those smaller pieces, so it wasn't everybody on stage all the time, that helped hugely. But I think just the way everybody played it, I was really pleased with how those relationships showed up. And so yeah, I was really glad to see when it was done that what I had seen in it was there. So that was really nice.
What were you gonna say, Charlotte?
Oh, I was going to go. Thank you, Cheryl. That was terrific. I feel the same way. Going back to Naima's point about her accent, I just wanted to underline the fact that's another example of where you really need the narrator to say, this is why she's talking like this, because if you don't have that explanation, then you're like, what's going on? Does she have like a speech impediment? Is she doing this on purpose? What's happening? So I think, and I honestly, I don't know how like ordinary productions of Dear Brutus handle that, because to me, it seems like a huge gap in your knowledge. So it's another reason why the narrative.
It's interesting that you say that, Charlotte, because I think that point right there highlights the difference between a staged version and this version. In a staged version, the other actors would have, and the character that Naima played would have the benefit of the audience being able to see how other people react to her accent and how other people and to listen to how other people interact with her and how their accents are around her, which is what you don't really have in this format. So totally, the narrator was absolutely necessary to smooth that over in this version. But I guess when it's staged, it's, I mean, you have benefits in a stage production that you wouldn't have in this format. You know what I mean?
So it's also a cultural thing because a British audience would know exactly what was going on.
True.
Yeah.
Well, true. A British audience would, yeah.
So
Nick, I
had something. I'm not sure if it answers the question, but I thought of it, so I'm just going to say it. One thing that doing the show via Zoom, it was an opportunity for me because I got to play an impish character, which, you know, when you're being viewed from like the shoulders up, you maybe can't tell I'm like 260 pounds and 6 feet tall and would never be confused with an imp ever. And so getting a chance to flex a muscle that, you know, on stage, I wouldn't have that opportunity. I'm not the right type for the part. But from the neck up, I am. And that's all you need. So, you know, developing a character voice and getting to throw on makeup, you know, it really charged my creative juices or whatever. And it was something that, you know, if it weren't for Zoom, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I mean, that was that was the other big thing about casting. Go back to casting. It was extremely important to me, and I remember having this conversation with Charlotte in the car when we were talking about like who would we ask to help us out, who would be willing, which one of my friends. It was important that each character is interesting enough to sustain that kind of attention from the like chest up, basically. And we love Nick Pecht, we do. And one of my favorite things about working with Nick is that he is such a physical comedic actor, like just phenomenal. And I was like, oh no, not getting to see his full self. That's not doing him justice. But knowing that with his face and things like that, he'd be able to bring that comic essence out. That was important. So each of my actors had to have a presence that on stage, they all have presence, but like this kind of format specifically. There was just something I feel like you had to be able to be drawn into that person to want to invest your time to sit for, you know, an hour, 2 hours. So that was important.
It's hard. I think it's harder to focus. Like I've watched a few Zoom theater performances since the pandemic happened, and at least for me, it's hard to be able to pay attention, because at least when you're in a theater, like it's dark, you can't check your phone, you can't like get up and get a snack. Whereas when like you're just a box on a screen, then it's so easy for me to be like, oh, I'm bored, let me go do something else. So you have to, like, as an actor, like be able to try and sort of keep people's attention, and in terms of editing as well, try and keep things snappy and quick and engaging, because it is a different medium.
Face acting is important.
Yeah, I have the best face actors in the world.
I wonder how quickly this same group of people could produce this show on stage, given that we'd have to get re off book, but obviously we did it with minimal props, like no set. Like how quickly, like if you had to do a show in a week, 2 weeks, could you do it? Probably could.
Yeah, I think we could.
I mean, Summer Stock, we did 9 plays in 10 weeks, and we were in all of them. So we knew back from our 20s how it can be done. But boy,
that's when I had all my gray cells.
Joe Ryan, who helped us with a lot of the filming stuff, asked if you had trouble staying in character when performing online. Like just sitting there.
You know what was really hard? Act 3. I had to focus so hard on character, facial expression, nuance. No, I'm kidding. I was asleep the entire act. It was challenging in that, like, I didn't want to actually fall asleep. But beyond that, no, I don't think it was that difficult, actually, in comparing it to stage acting, for me anyway, staying in character and, interacting. I mean, when you're working in a group and, it's sort of, you have like a group goal. And if somebody is, lays down on the job or breaks character, then the goal doesn't get met or not as quickly or whatever. So I think we were all, I don't want to speak for you guys, but no, I don't think it was that I wouldn't say was a challenge.
I think for
anyone,
just for the sense of, typically, if we were to have done this on stage, the actors would have had the benefit of, doing their scene, walking off, hanging out in the green room to like relax for a little bit. So when we kind of talked about filming and kind of breaking down, we broke down the scenes, or the play is in 3 acts, and there's no scenes. So we kind of broke them down into like little moments, like, now Mady has left. So we don't obviously want Ken on screen. I think that's also we do want Ken on screen. We do.
I agree with that 100%.
We don't want Ken to have to suffer through the rest of us if he can go off and do his own thing for a little bit.
Yeah, I know. It seems like I don't like Ken.
Poor
and he's
Ken.
like one of my favorite people.
Yeah, what the hell, Mayor?
Hey, Alice hates me.
But making sure that everyone had the chance to, like, if they weren't in that scene, they could, just turn off their camera and, get some tea or water, do their own thing for a little bit. That was important, because if we tried to have everyone be engaged and on the screen at the time, even if they weren't talking, I think it could have, and it also would have drawn away from everything.
Yeah.
Codename Puppy asks, what do the actors think will be next for their characters, and who do you have the most hope for change?
I talked about it for Matt.
What about for Joanna? Do you think you
said he had a baby? That's what I'm trying to say. It's not sad.
It's true. You think Joanna's going to philander again?
Absolutely. I think I do. I really do. And the same thing with I know he's not here to also say this, but Purdy himself, they talk about it in the third act. There'll be someone else, Mabel says, that's not Joanna. And what it takes for somebody to actually change, and whether or not, some of these people changed after the fact. And as actors, I think we kind of talked about it, but ultimately whatever their goal was, or whatever they thought their life would be like after this experience, I let them, we talked about it, but they pretty much kept that to themselves. I didn't say, oh no, that's wrong. That's no, he would quit drinking. So it was more like how each actor thought their life might change. Because I think everyone in life, when you have an experience like that, some people, are affected by it enough to actually want to make that change in their lives to be a different person. And then some people are just like, all right, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. So I think, for me, I think Joanna probably would philander again, probably. She seems to be bored with, like if no one's paying attention to her and it's not new, I think she seems like she might be bored by it.
I think the codes would wind up being who they were then, just keep on, because as long as he's got the stool for his wife, they'll just put her on their own way.
Well, yeah, my biggest problem with the character was the fact that I just had to admit that when we're together, we're hopelessly cute. And as a performer, I have tried most of my career and director to avoid being cute. Now that we're older and been together so long, it's just kind of hopeless.
Yes, and Nick, when I was a younger actor, I got those little imp roles because I was short.
But yeah, no, we were totally stuck with cuteness, which I guess the codes would be too, because they are cute and sweet. But that's okay.
So one of the,
Go ahead. Was there anybody else? Did you?
No one jumped. Did anyone else want to talk about their characters?
I wanted to go last. Because it's a little I kind of had a sense that Lob, he was ancient, right? Like hundreds of years old. And every summer he was gathering a group of people, who desired a second chance. And every summer he hoped to see this mystical event occur, and it finally happens. So I think he died almost immediately.
That checks out.
He got what he wanted. He lived a long, good life. He's now with his flowers. He's feeding his flowers.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say that, because if you had read some of these lines in a different tone of voice, like as actors, like this could have been a horror movie, to be honest.
Remember the read-through when I was reading it in a kind of a weird tone, and I was like Mojo Jojo.
Yeah.
Easily. I mean, my initial reading actually was he is like this sinister
puppet master
person, and so I pulled back on that quite a bit after.
But yeah, there's like some lines that are just like it could be totally played as like a horror movie.
Yeah. I think it just depends on how you want to, the tone you want to take with the piece, and I think we were aiming for something a little lighter.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ken, feel like we skip over Ken. Ken, you wanna?
I think Métis over time just went back to being his, being his same old self.
That gonna be with Caroline? What?
No. Well, Caroline doesn't. Well, Caroline she'd have nothing to do with. Caroline would have nothing to do with old Métis. So,
Oh, don't be so sure.
now, of course, I don't know what happens if Nick's character dies. I mean, I don't know what happens to him then, but I just figure over time he just kind of went back into his own routines and would, take a ring or two here or there, whatever, do whatever he could to get by.
So this play was actually written like 100 years ago.
Like, I mean, not like a,
It was like 101,
over 100.
over 100 years ago.
It was-
Over 100 years ago.
1917.
So how do you think it holds up to present day?
1917, the same year as the last pandemic.
Yes, that was the interesting thing that we found about the show is the last time that there was a huge pandemic, the Spanish flu.
Do you think in choosing this for our 2020 season, we caused the pandemic?
Oh,
No,
no.
you're saying no.
You did.
Just saying.
Yeah. We can blame Charlotte.
Yeah.
No.
Caused this all.
You're the narrator. You caused it all.
That's true.
I think Cheryl talked about it earlier. It's a show about grown-ups, and each of these characters' flaws still hold true today. I mean, there are, people still have affairs. There are, people are thieves. There are women that are holding out for, the best husband. There are, people who are struggling in a marriage. That's all real life now. So I think the characters, they definitely held the test of time. They definitely could be people from this day and age. Anybody?
Anyone else have thoughts on this being an old play?
Yeah,
I
I do.
might have said at one point that maybe in a more modern play, Lob wouldn't be in it. But I've been reading an awful lot of strange and mystical plays, so I don't think even that is stated in terms of that. But from that point of view, though, I really, in reading it, I wondered why Lob was in it. And you guys really made it very clear, both in the way the character was played and the way you worked him into it. So my first impression was, do we need him to tell the story? To someone quite that weird, but he really did. I'm sorry, Ken.
Oh, it doesn't he brings them all together, right? How
Yeah.
would you bring them all together if there wasn't a
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't have a circus without the ringmaster.
Yeah.
One
I mean-
element, I feel like one element to this show and other shows of its time is that the idea of class is so prevalent or so immediately noticeable.
Yeah.
When you have groups of people together, particularly who aren't family, they immediately want to, put themselves in rank and file, and who is upper class, who is lower class, who is of the serving class. And I think that obviously plays more into some of the story, obviously Matey. But in general, we don't, I think in modern times, have such an immediate grasp of, I mean, some do, but class doesn't play, in some time periods doesn't play as big a role. So there might be some challenges there.
Also, to Brits, especially through the 19th century and into the 20th, a house party was a thing.
Mhm.
It wasn't, you just come over for the weekend. They would stay weeks. Rich people would have a bunch of couples over and they would stay for weeks. And so
yeah.
that's something that's not done so much anymore. But I don't
To
know.
modernize it, you could
each other
easily
now.
make, Lob as an innkeeper, and these are people staying at a bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and it would still serve that purpose of, strangers together
Yeah.
and like a ringmaster or whatever.
I think thematically, it's almost a very familiar story. It's getting a bunch of different people together under one roof, and something triggers them all to have some kind of existential moment. So if you think about it, it's a little bit like Clue. It's a little bit like The Big Chill. It's a little bit like, you know what I mean? Like, and Lob as that central character, like you need to have an extraordinarily bizarre character trigger all of that, because you need people need a bizarre, anomalous trigger to push them into an existential moment, to put them in a place where their mind is open to questioning their entire life and all their choices. And in this circumstance, in this particular version of that story, everyone is hearkening back to a road not taken, where in their past their paths diverged, and what it would have been like if they'd taken this branch as opposed to this branch. And that is totally transcendent. You can have the exact same thing in 1917 or right now, just getting people together and making them question their life choices, surrounded by other people who are questioning their own, and especially doing it in a circumstance where, like Matt said, in like 100 years ago, and especially in Britain, there would be this incredibly rigid class structure, but that is exactly how it is now, just in a different way. We all still categorize ourselves differently. It might be more laterally, but there are still things that divide us all, and we still need to feel identified by one particular group or another. So when you take people from all of those different things and put them all together and then strike that match, you can trigger extraordinary circumstances, like a bizarre trip into a wood where who knows if we'll ever come back kind of circumstance, you know. And I think that story, the reason that story's been told so many times in so many ways across so many genres, is because it's totally transcendent and relatable, no matter the time period.
I've been unable to forget the show every time I go grocery shopping. Go right down the aisle in Giant, as I pass one aisle, are all the razors. And I think of Love and that wonderful monologue that Ken has about all the razors he had. And I love that.
It's just
How many
funny.
persons ate, yeah, because you can, about all the different types, basically how many different, you know, versions of a razor.
I've got at least 4 different brands of razors in our bathroom right now. Every time Gillette comes out with a new shaver, I get it.
See, I thought that meant that, like, how many razors he goes through, like, in like a day or like a week. Like, you know, he's old. He's just shaving all the time.
So I totally misread that the first time, and I thought, so like when I use a razor, once it gets dull, I throw it out. I don't know about you. So having a ton of razors was immediately one of the things, like, oh, he's like Freddy Krueger collecting razors.
That's what I
was like, oh, no, that's not what this is at all.
That's another one where the line could be read totally differently, and it would mean so many different things.
You know, I was reading it around Halloween, and I think that may have, you know.
When we first started reading this, it was definitely around Halloween. But yeah, I think while Kat was talking, I was thinking about like another situation, and I was like, oh, we could have played this in like the 1970s, and Lob could have like slipped them all acid, and then this was all like just
exactly.
I don't know why that came up, but that was what my immediately.
Everyone was just high on Quaaludes. It'd been great.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
Could have happened.
In the 20s,
put your keys in this bowl.
I'm in.
But even just the beginning about why did he bring us together? If they played it like they were really scared and needed to know what they were doing there, it would be a totally different thing. And I guess you could have gotten away with it.
Yeah.
So, and also reminded me, because of Halloween, excuse me, I definitely, you know, the fact that this takes place in midsummer and was released in late winter or like late December, I had a moment of like, But as I was watching it for that first time, something that really connected for me was this idea of second chances. And it really reminded me of It's a Wonderful Life, that seminal Christmas holiday. Have you heard of it? Okay. So I just kind of wanted to point that out. Like, I think that I don't know how much of this was by design, but it was actually like a really great holiday, fare. Thinking about life choices, and if only it was set in the winter, it would have been perfect. But it was, I think, great that it got to be like something to do with your family on the holiday.
Yeah, that wasn't by design. It just we made it by design later on. But yeah, it just happened to chance that this is when we got to release it. I think I was like, we should release it like right before Christmas. And I think that originally when I set out to do this, our timeline was like super short. And I was like, we're going to get it out in November. And then I started, And then I started to like do things and kind of figure things out. I was like, okay, December. Okay, the end of December. Because I think anytime I kind of come up with an idea, my initial instinct is thinking that it's going to be a lot easier than it really is, and which is awful. And I put Haley and Charlotte through so much because I'm like, because in my mind I can see it. So if I can see everything already put together in my mind, it shouldn't take that long to do all of this. And at least with plays, when we're doing live theater, you're kind of like stuck to a time like, okay, we are opening on this date. So we are going to build this set as fast as we can. And I'm going to stay as late as I can. And I think Charlotte was she's like, oh, no late nights. We're not gonna have to build. And then when we started editing, that was the end of it. It was like, no more late nights, except, it's Mary Alice like harping on something at 1 a.m.
Which is typical.
It is. And I think, we had the benefit of that snowstorm, and I got snowed in at Charlotte's. So that was a good chunk of time that we were kind of stuck having to do just focusing on editing. But yeah, I think I originally had thought it was going to be a lot sooner. But I wanted to get it out before the end of the year. Like that was always the goal. And I did consciously think like when we were ready to do it, what's the best time? And I didn't want to do it on Christmas Eve. So I think we did it on Christmas Eve. Yeah. So that way, family members could gather around, and sometimes people are off and things like that. So that's how I ended up with that.
You would have gotten away with it if you had just said, yes, it was by design. We wanted you to watch this with your families at Christmas.
None of us would have questioned it.
No, because I have to be honest, it was not as easy as I thought it was going to be.
But I think the upside of that is, although we were learning along the way, but I think we've learned a lot of lessons about sort of, because this is a very unique like situation and a unique format. So I think we learned a lot of lessons that we can maybe implement in the future, I think, of how to make things a little smoother for next time. So
yeah. We definitely would have had a continuity coach.
Yeah, there's a couple things we would have done differently. So I know this was like the first film that a lot of people have done. And do you think that you would continue to do more films or stick more to theater when we can do live theater, or both?
It's not it's not Kat's
this
first
was not
rodeo.
A Kat. I said most people's first film. I know Kat has been in films before, but to the rest of you, Naima?
I would do both. I mean, they're both different. They're their own separate entities. So they have beauty within each other that's different. So I would do both. I just think I have more, I feel like the body is an instrument, and I feel like I have more, I can't even think, I'm having a brain fart.
You have more to offer.
I'm able to use more of the stage and move around, and
Your body's a tool. Go on.
but yeah. And you never know what's going to happen on stage. Like when you're on stage, when you're filming, you could cut, do another take.
Yeah.
When you're on stage,
you really
just
miss the spontaneity of a live audience, audience feedback, hearing people laugh or clap, that really informs, I think, a performance.
Yeah.
And so not having that is just very different.
Yes.
I think I would do film again. I think I'm really looking forward to getting back on a stage.
And the
But
money,
in the meantime, Mary Alice, if you have any other projects.
the money's much better in film, so I would stick with film.
That's true.
Yeah.
Your check's in the mail.
Yeah, I'm waiting. I've been checking my mail every day.
Well, it's been slow, so.
Yeah, right. I understand that. Yeah.
Ever since Charlotte's mom retired from the Postal Service, there's no one.
Yeah. Well, that's the reason. That's fine.
Yeah, it's no good. No good anymore.
I tell you one thing about film that really infuriated me. I was part of a commercial, and I had it was an imitation of one of the juice commercials or something, where everybody had a crack to make different, snotty lady. I was the snotty lady going, very full, which makes me lightheaded. And people would see this and they would say, I was so thrilled to see you. I'm like, good God, it was 3 seconds worth of work. I've done 100 plays in my life, and they are thrilled by my 3 seconds. And that's really infuriated, but it seems to people to be so impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's weird because it is, we are able to reach a wider audience this way. So that's interesting. So people from all over could, you could share your work with friends that are all the way out in California or across the world. So that's nice because they, being in the heart of Morrisville, sometimes it's hard to get people to come out to see your show.
Especially when people are also acting at the same time. A lot of our friends are also actors, so they have a show and there's no conflicts now because you can watch it on YouTube at any time.
I definitely would not direct a film and act in it again.
So lesson learned.
Yeah, I think when I first decided to do it, I think we were just trying to keep the number of people down because I, didn't want to have I wanted to have as small group as possible, so I can control the health
scheduling.
But yeah.
Do you think this will continue after the pandemic's over? I mean, would you do this if there wasn't a pandemic?
I don't think I would have had the opportunity to. I want to say that because I always have the opportunity to do things like this. I don't think it would have came up for me to do it. I mean, I have a whole notebook of random ideas for movies and things like that, videos that
a musical.
Yeah, I have a musical I wrote, all these things, and I don't think that unless we were kind of forced to think outside the box, I would have actually pursued it. I don't know whether any of my ideas are good enough to pursue again, so we'll see.
I don't know, this one was pretty good. And in the future, if there is no pandemic, then we could film on different schedule. We could have people interact a little bit more, wouldn't have to worry about as many precautions. So
yeah, we had a lot of precautions that we had to worry about. But yeah, I think would do it again if if we have to. That's not it. That's not what I mean. But yeah,
I think this time has, I mean, I know sort of at the start of this, I was like, oh, this is great. I'm going to get so much done, be so creative. And that didn't, work out, as I'm sure maybe the case for other people, or maybe you've been fantastically creative and productive. But I think the fact that sort of things of like, we haven't been able to do as much, it's been a great time to sort of percolate on these ideas that maybe we've had. So to answer your question, Ken, I don't think this would have, I don't know if this would have necessarily happened if there hadn't been the pandemic, but now that we've done it and we've sort of gotten a taste for it, I think at least now we know we can do it under really crazy circumstances. So if in the future we want to do something similar, hopefully when circumstances are more favorable, then we know we've done it before, so why not try it again?
Well, Dramatic Publishing is actually, I got an email from them, the Dramatic Publishing Co. is actually putting out plays about Zoom family meetings. And so it's intended to be done that way now. So maybe we'll be stuck with this for a while. I don't know.
I do want to mention, because I think I think maybe one of the questions that we did get were comments after we sent out the invitation for this, is ActorsNET posting some of our other previous shows that we've done, and questions like what else do we have in the future. I will say this, so for shows that the royalties are free or in the public domain, this type of format is super easy. We don't have to answer to anybody, and we can kind of post these things online. But for other shows, some of our previous shows that aren't Shakespeare or Shaw
or Wilde
or Oscar Wilde, that aren't in the public domain, we are kind of bound by copyright laws and what we can show online. So if you're looking for some of our other shows and you want to see them on YouTube, the reason why we haven't posted them is because there's copyright rules around it. So I think there's so many plays out there that we actually can do. Of course, they're all, was it 100? How many years?
95, I think.
Yeah.
It's anything in the US, anything published 1925 and earlier is in the public domain. So we can do whatever we want to it.
So that's more the kind of shows that, we might be able to do, or if somebody writes something and we decide to do it, and we don't have to worry about copyright. But
The Great Gatsby just came into the public domain. So if anyone wants to write a Great Gatsby stage adaptation, now's the time.
With or without the Muppets?
That's the question.
I think this has been like one of the longest talkbacks that we've ever had. And I don't know if it's because we all want to talk so much, or we had so many great things to say. Does anyone have anything else?
It wasn't a long night after a show.
This is true. Yeah.
I was curious of do you have plans for spring and summer doing outdoor shows?
That's a great question, Ken. So the space that we used to do the woods scene, she has a wonderful backyard setup that's not in the woods, that she does open mics at and things like that. And so we did talk, and one of the thoughts was maybe we got together and did a outdoor show there, or Morrisville, although I was in one of the parks in Morrisville, and in my mind, when I remember it's Williamson Park, I originally was like, oh, maybe we can film there, and Joe and Cheryl can just pop across the street. And I thought that it was so much further back from oncoming traffic.
Yeah.
Or like, I just forgot how for some reason, I just thought it was a lot longer to where the park is. but the sound, I mean, that was like the biggest reason. Like there's so many cars, and we had trouble already in the park, or in
But
the
that's
woods.
like for filming, but maybe something more live.
I feel like that's just very distracting.
Yeah,
I
like,
would
what
love
about-
to do some outdoor theater. I know that Charlotte and I've always talked about doing like getting a group together and doing like a play in a park, just like randomly one day, just get all friends and just like kind of do something. So that's definitely in the realm of possibility. And I think to me that would be the most optimal type of scenario, because
Yeah, like,
I love
what
live
about
theater.
Williamson Park, the stage there? You know, we did 1776 and Main Obata Country and stuff. Doing that during the summer, during the warmer months, small
That
show. I mean, you couldn't do a huge cast, I guess, but small.
It was a pretty difficult venue. I am beginning with a few people to work on something. One of our board members has written a play that is very Zoom possible. So we're beginning to look into working on that, and royalty free, but modern play. So hopefully we'll get it done, but we'll have to see if we can get it all pulled together. I'll need some advice on how to film it. So how to have two people talking to each other for a half an hour. So
We'll see.
Any other?
Any other comments from the cast? The last comment we have was from Angelica DeSantos, and they said that Nick's performance was just as animated when they are on stage. So.
She's a big fan. Thanks, Angie.
With that, I think we'll wrap up the talk back, and we can all get to drinking in the green room. I mean, just
Technically our roof is green, but yeah.
Thank you all so much for joining us and for writing comments and for watching, and tune in for more.
All right, thank you. Good
Night.
to see you guys. Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye, everyone.